Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar, Best Practices for AI-Ready Marketing Data. This is a session that our team is really excited about. We're getting more and more questions on this topic and are going to be focusing even more in this area in the future. So we're excited to share some insights and practical tips with you today. So I'm just going to jump right in with housekeeping items. This is a 30-minute session that will, of course, be recorded. Shortly after the session and the next day or so, you should get a copy of the recording alongside just some resources and documentation on the different items that we cover today. And so today we're going to start with some common data quality challenges facing marketing data professionals, and we'll share some nice research that the team put together as well. Then the main portion of this webinar, of course, is going to be the best data practices for AI-ready data. And that'll cover some practical tips and then how you can actually apply some of these practices using tools within your Adverity platform. And then we'll give a glimpse into the near future of the platform with Adverity Intelligence, which will also include an invite to another webinar next week. So be excited for that. And then our speakers today, we'll start with me. Hi, my name is Michelle Lagruda. I'm a customer marketing manager here at Adverity, and I'll be here today to cover some of the best practices, both at the conceptual level and just by covering some of the tools in Adverity, just based on some recommendations and such that we give to our various customers. And then also with us, we have Kate Price, who is a product marketing manager here at Adverity. Kate helps manage our data quality features and our AI offerings. So she's a really great resource to have here today and help put together some of the great content that you'll see. And then Kate, I'm going to leave these slides for you.
In this section, I'm going to talk about the issues that marketers often see with their data quality and why it is an increasingly important metric for us to think about. We recently released a report which discusses the importance of data quality and its impact on marketing teams and businesses. One striking fact is that Gartner estimates that on average, poor data quality costs each organization upwards of $12.9 million annually due to misleading insights, poor decisions, and ultimately wasted resources. With this in mind, of the people we spoke to, 30% of them said that improving data quality would have the biggest positive impact on their business. What do we mean when we say data quality? Things such as data completeness, consistency, and uniqueness, which are all things that we can monitor and improve with tech such as the Adverity Data Suite, and all items that Michelle's going to touch on later on. Start again. Accurate data has never been more important. As downstream use cases get more complex, we know that smarter models need smarter foundations. We know that AI requires a strong data foundation in order to give any meaningful outputs or insights, but data quality can be dangerously overlooked. If you are working with flawed and poor quality data, the most advanced AI analytics in the world will still only give you flawed and poor quality insights. The simple truth is, if you aren't going to fix the quality of your data, then any investment into AI tools is a waste of money and can lead to further issues down the line. But data quality isn't a new problem for marketers. However, the consequences of leaving it unaddressed are increasingly evident. In the top right of the slide here, you can scan the QR code to access our report and read it all through for yourself, and we'll also include it in our email follow-up. So, what are marketers doing with this data? We know that there are more and more complex use cases that help marketers work smarter with the data they have, and even more reasons why data quality is so important. So if we look at AI first, whether it's AI models or complex workflows, it's a great tool to help you get the most out of your data and help you make more informed decisions. However, if you're working with dodgy data, these decisions may be flawed. AI doesn't fix cracks in your foundation, it just accelerates them. Ensuring high quality data is key to making data-driven marketing decisions, and this is especially crucial in a world where conversational and agentic AI are becoming commonplace tools. So if you are using or planning to use AI to support your marketing efforts, remember, high quality data isn't just a nice to have. It's the foundation of every successful business. If you want to utilize your data for MMM models, you have to ensure that your data is not only clean and accurate, but also formatted in the specific way required. The Data Quality Suite also addresses issues like these by allowing you to specify the names and orders of each of your data columns. Ensuring that you've got a clean data set means it can be ready to go quicker than before. In large-scale operations, data quality is important because of the need to solve issues and alert to errors before it goes further downstream. Poor data can have a snowball effect, which builds to something unmanageable in large-scale operations. There is an element of peace of mind as well in the safety and security of knowing that your data is clean and therefore you have clean analysis. It's impossible to manually check every level in a large-scale operation, so good data quality foundations are vital.
Thank you, Kate. That was great. So now with this section, almost all the best practices here that we're going to share stem from real recommendations that we give to our customers, especially for teams we help set up with data conversations, which is our conversational AI tool. And so even if you're not necessarily training data models yet, these tips and best practices are still good just to ensure a strong, scalable data foundation, like Kate mentioned the importance of. And then it'll just really help set you up for success for when you are ready to work with more complex AI use cases. And so before we start, I just want to quickly highlight our 6 pillars of data quality. And together, these provide a simple, structured approach that we use to evaluate our customers' data integrity. And so whether you are preparing your data to be analyzed by AI or if you're powering your own intelligence tools, these pillars are key to ensure the right data is being fed into your tools and that it's being interpreted correctly and all that good stuff. So we'll use these to help guide our recommendations. And you will see there is a little bit of overlap between some of them as well. Okay, and so then we're going to start with our data accuracy and data consistency pillars. And so, Kate kind of touched on some of this, and we actually recently had a really nice podcast with Kinesso that talked about how bad data, especially in the context of AI use cases, can really accelerate mistakes in your pipeline. So it's very important to address these at the foundational level, and this should all be a good starting point. And then as someone working with an ETL tool, you more than likely are already have consistent formats for fields like dates and currencies and whatnot. But you also want to make sure that higher level categorical fields and attributes are defined and maintained along your pipeline as well. So thinking about something as simple as location names, like the example we have on the slide here, so, once you have your campaigns running, one team might be tagging a campaign as New York City, another team member might be tagging it as NY or NYC. And, your AI model might see this and it might accidentally treat these as completely separate markets, which can, of course, then skew your spend or your performance insights. And then, very similarly, on here, the second bullet, this concept also applies with naming conventions. So if you think about your downstream users, they're not always going to be using the same terminology as each other. I know that's a common issue that our businesses experience. Or these users are often not using the same terminology as the field names which are powering your models. So whether they're categorizing, campaigns at the higher level, or if they're actually physically in the ad platform, actually typing in campaign titles, words. You really want to make sure that there's just consistency across the board. And then just before we go into that, just a really quick good example we have here is when we look at usage patterns for our Adverity's data conversations tool, which again, that's our conversational AI. So very, very often we see that end users, so the people that are going into the AI, they're querying and they're looking for results and comparisons and whatnot. Very often we see that these end users are searching for performance by looking up brand name or by country specific name in their queries. So for example, someone might be typing in what is my top performing campaign in the UK, or what is my top performing campaign in the United Kingdom. And so, having inconsistencies here, they really do impact how AI systems can learn from your data or generate insights. So if you do have your data dictionary set up, it's always a good idea to align with teams on approved terms and approved naming conventions, and then trickle those downwards where you can. However, we know with our larger teams and especially agency customers that actually enforcing these conventions can sometimes be one of the biggest challenges. So if you're not already using it or if you're not aware it exists, I just want to give a quick shout that Adverity does have a smart naming conventions tool, and that could be a big help here. So what it does is you define your naming convention structure, and then it will automatically correct any incoming data to make sure that it fits that structure for you. So it just takes a lot of manual work out of organizing and structuring your data, and just kind of, it's a time saver, just kind of helps remove that potential for human error. And then just go down the list quickly. As we know, marketing data is always changing, always moving very quickly. Sources like Google Ads or Instagram are always adding or removing fields. Sometimes they change the name of fields. But of course, we know that small data changes can really snowball over time and end up skewing your projections if they're left unaddressed. So while tools like Adverity, we do help keep up with changes for you, if you're running with a lot of data, it's always a good idea to do an audit every now and again, just to see what your most popular fields are and how they're being used in your pipeline. And data lineage tools, of course, really come in handy for this. You can see in the screenshot here, this is from our data dictionary tool. And in this case, you can see exactly how often a field is used. And on the screenshot here, it's looking at clicks. And then with that, you can just see how often and where a field is used, so you can make sure nothing is ever incorrectly mapped. And then so that's a good starting point for looking at things. And then also, if you're not already using it, we also do have an auto mapping feature here and can help with that. And that works exactly as the name suggests. You kind of set, hey, if the fields with these names are coming in, I want them to automatically be mapped to these other data fields. So that's just a nice automation to, again, help eliminate some potential for human error. So that could be a good one to check out. And then another very quick shout out here before I go to the next slide is that we have our data quality suite, which is a collection of data quality focused tools. And in that, we have something called a column consistency tool. And this, Kate did touch on a bit earlier. This is a little more relevant for like complex analytics tools like MMM providers. So for example, I know with a lot of MMM tools, they require incoming data to come in and be structured in a very specific order with very specific column header names. And so what this tool does is it helps you define the names of all your data columns and the order they come in. So you can push it into these tools just to ensure downstream consistency there. So if that's something that's been a challenge for you in the past, it just might be worth reaching out to your account manager to learn more. All right, and next, our next two pillars, we have completeness and uniqueness pillars. This will cover a few tips for helping add context to AI models, but they're all good practices to follow in general for any advanced data analytics use cases or projects. And so, none of us are really new to AI. And as we all know, context is absolutely key to having successful outcomes in AI. And that's true whether you're prompting a tool or if you're actually feeding data into the intelligence itself. And so with that in mind, we are increasingly recommending to anyone working with AI that they give clear descriptions to all the data columns that they ingest. And so data descriptions, that just helps the AI understand exactly what each value represents. It's very, very simple, but it does go a long way in producing more accurate results over time. And this is actually a very common recommendation that we give when we are helping set teams up with data conversations. And what you can do is you can set up data descriptions right from Adverity's data dictionary tool. Very simple. The default fields should already have data descriptions set up in there for you. But if you've added any new custom fields, you'll need to go in there and add the descriptions yourself. It's simple, but really an effective way to improve performance. So just make sure you take a look there. And also, data descriptions are quite helpful internally for, especially for new team members. It just also gives you kind of a quick understanding at a glance of what each value means. And then our next bullets here tie up in a bit with the category consistency that we mentioned previously, and that's looking at different types of data segmentation. So, as you're preparing for AI use cases, now is a great time to assess your existing data categories or get categories set up if you don't already. And so on this slide, we share just a couple of e-commerce examples where you might, and in this case, these examples show how you might want AI to quickly identify customer journey stages, just similar like you would categorizing your data for your own human-powered analytics. And so segmenting your data is very helpful from a model efficiency standpoint. What it does, it just, it helps reduce noise, which helps AI retrieve answers faster, and it just paints overall a clearer picture to help it better get to the output that you're trying to generate. However, with segmentation, be aware that overly segmenting your data can really backfire, in certain cases. So if you have a lot of data and you're running a lot of small segments with a lot of overlap, you run the risk of having too small of sample sizes or muddying labels up. And that means, mentioned earlier, marketing data, it changes very quickly. So as things change over time, having all this overlap can really end up creating more work and overhead for your team. And if left unaddressed, it can really hurt the long-term accuracy of your model. So a good mindset to have here is to make sure you segment around your most stable and impactful metrics. So think of things like customer type or life cycle stage, things like that, rather than trying to capture every possible classification and variation. And then another category that's becoming increasingly important as we work more and more with AI is the sensitivity levels of your data. And so tagging specific data sets with things like PII or first party data makes it much easier to apply the right access controls across your pipelines so that sensitive information can be easily excluded from the processing or the model training. And this is also really handy if you ever need to audit your data usage, just to prove that you are handling sensitive data responsibly. Um, just tags are just a great way to help simplify the process of tracing how data is used across your tools and your system. But all in all, I would say the context and tagging here, they're really helpful both for AI models, but also the actual humans analyzing your data. So definitely recommend applying these and just keeping up with them when you can. All right, now we're going to look at our data timeliness and validity pillars. So, Kate mentioned this earlier, but of course, even the most advanced data models can only perform as well as the data that it's given. And our first few points here cover the importance of scheduling in this context, especially for times where you're collecting large amounts of data. So let's start first with fetch times here. So whether you're working with a large historic data fetch for a new connector, or maybe you're just managing your day-to-day fetches, you really want to make sure that you give them a good buffer before your model updates. So for example, if your model updates at 2 in the morning, you want to make sure that all of your data is fetched and complete by 1 in the morning. So you eliminate the risk of that model running on data that's stale or incomplete. And then very, very often we do is these next two bullets are very common recommendations we make to our customers, whether they're working with AI or even if it's just general best account practices and data hygiene. But very often we're recommending that customers make sure their schedules, their data fetch schedules don't overlap. And that just helps keep performance high in your account. It keeps things running smoothly. And we also recommend that when you do run larger historic data fetches containing a lot of data, that you save those for after hours when no one's actively working with your data. And that's just because these large fetches can take a lot of time, and it just helps prevent potential disruptions in your account if people are actively working with that data. And then to help with all of these things, I highly, highly suggest working with Adverity's smart scheduling feature. And that's a new tool that we released a little earlier this year. And so how smart scheduling works is basically you just tell Adverity like, hey, this is my data stream. I want the data collected by this time. So maybe you want to make sure all of your data is in by like that 1 a.m. example given earlier. And so what smart scheduling will do is it'll factor in a bunch of things like API performance. It'll consider the data volume of a fetch. It'll look at other scheduled fetches in your account, and more. And basically takes all that to coordinate your fetch times accordingly to make sure that your data arrives on the specified time. It's a really helpful tool for data timeliness. It's very highly requested by our customers. It's very popular. So make sure you go in there, open your data streams, and set it when you can. But manual scheduling is, of course, always still available as well. And then finally, notifications are a really good guardrail to set up so you can quickly troubleshoot if incorrect data is flowing down your pipelines and potentially into your AI models. This is big for the validity piece here. And so some notification examples we put in here that can be, I think, quite helpful for any AI readiness cases are notifications if a data stream or transformation fails. And so with that, you can, quickly resolve an issue at the source and see, hey, like, are the data issues coming from somewhere in my pipeline? Or are they happening at the higher level within the ad platform itself? This is just a good tool to help you get started on troubleshooting there. Then we have alerts if an authorization is expired, and that just helps quickly fix gaps in your data pipeline. And the other one, which I think is particularly good, are notifications if a mapping has changed or if new values are added. So with that, you can make sure that the data flowing in down your pipeline is actually the correct and expected values. And this is key, especially if maybe you have a few fields that are similar but still a little different from each other, and someone might mistakenly map a new field or just assign something incorrectly. This can help you identify that and just correct it right away. And we'll touch a little bit more on the AI specific implications on the next slide here. But just want to call out, these are just some of the notifications available to you in your account. You can go into your administration settings in Adverity to get more set up. There's even more available. You could set them up at the data stream level or the workspace level. And then anyone working with our data quality suite can also set up additional notifications for data volume or if duplicate data rows emerge, amongst other things too. And then just part 2 here for our data timeliness and validity points. I'm just going to continue down here. So one thing we see time and time again with our customers, and this is again, especially when we're working with data going into data conversations and helping prepare our customers for these AI use cases, is we see that, a lot of times when you're working with a brand new AI tool, you very often are doing a lot of testing. So very often we see that test data streams either aren't turned off properly or might mistakenly get turned back on, maybe by another user. So you always want to make sure you're going into your account and archiving test data streams to prevent them from being accidentally ingested down the line and causing data inflation. And so how we do that, we have an example on this slide, is we normally just recommend archiving a data stream by adding a bunch of Z's to the front of it. So that way, when you're sorting through your data streams, it automatically will be set to the bottom when you're filtering alphabetically. And then hopefully also it's a good visual cue for people in your account if they're scrolling through and they see something with ZZZ archive at the front of a data stream. That should be a good indicator that maybe they should go in and turn that on. And then similar to, accidental data inflation that could happen as a result of test data streams being accidentally collecting data, sometimes, too much data can be a bad thing for AI processing, and that happens at the field level too. And, data, we are all marketing data professionals, and we know that data is so important, and we all want to be able to make the most informed decisions possible and find all those great stories within our data. But with initiatives like AI, where it's very high speed, very high impact, mistakes really are magnified. So it's always smart to be a little more vigilant at first, and then, especially if you're just starting out with a large AI project, and then you can always expand outwards from there. So from that to that point, if you're thinking of adding new fields, and especially calculated or custom fields, just take a second and think, make sure you actually need the data before you map and transform it. So, keeping your data lean helps reduce unnecessary noise in your models, and it can also help prevent downstream errors with your users who might not fully understand the nuances of things. So, when you're doing your data audits, it's always a good idea to check here, check your data streams, check your field, and just archive things when needed. And then in our data dictionary, you can see actually how many times a field is mapped, which should be a helpful starting point. Or on the data stream page, you can filter by if a run is scheduled or not. You can filter by data streams that have a lot of issues and more. There's a bunch of filters. So hopefully those two things can give you some good starting points to look at. And then another important piece to touch on here are null values. So blanks in your data or null values, they don't just cause, obvious data inaccuracy, but they also really can confuse your model's understanding of what is normal for your data and what are expected business outcomes. And that could have much longer term implications on how it interprets trends and, provides suggestions. So when you see a null, of course, you want to make sure you correct it. But if you do start, it also could be a good indicator, especially if you have repeated null values, that it might be time to retire a field. And then, just like you would any project, whether it's an AI facing one or not, you want to make sure that you take time to review outliers. So if you see spikes in your data or dips, you want to take a look and ask yourself, are these due to real campaign events? So, one thing, it's a good example is if you see a spike, in your data, and then, maybe you have a campaign just launched and you have really strong impressions or much higher than expected clicks off the bat, it can be very tempting to look at that and say, oh, this is great. Our performance is doing so well. But if it is unexpected, it never hurts to take a quick look in there. Could this spike be due to a little bit of maybe we've accidentally ingested too much data? Maybe someone accidentally turned off a filter on a connector. It's always good to just approach with a little bit of caution, just in case, so you can address mistakes early and before they do affect the way your AI understands, again, what is normal for your business performance. And then another quick thing that can help with some of this as well is we did very recently just launch in the platform an overview page. And that's just available on the left-hand menu bar in the platform. It should be at the very top of the menu, just a little thing that says overview. And you click it, and as long as it's not your first time ever logging into Adverity, the overview page will give you a list of action items, and that could be a helpful starting point. So if you have data streams with warnings that you might want to address, any data streams with errors that are stopping the flow of data, it'll flag that to you in a nice list. If you use our data quality suite, there'll be even more action items related to that there. So that's just another helpful starting point when we're just been looking for just any proactive error prevention, I would say. And then I would say just a major takeaway here with this slide and all the others is that, maintaining data models and ensuring long-term accuracy really can be even more challenging of a task than it takes to actually set up an AI model. And that's especially, as we mentioned several times earlier, but marketing data is always changing and always evolving. So staying proactive about issues and really making sure you understand the root cause to issues when they do occur is really key to helping maintain the trust in your data and ensuring reliable outcomes. And then Kate, I'll leave this slide to you here.
If you want to learn more about what Adverity has coming up, we also have an upcoming webinar which is focusing on our Adverity Intelligence section of the platform. We'll be discussing how you can work with your trusted data to get actionable insights, plus give you a sneak peek into what we have coming up next year. You'll see on the screen here some of the items that we'll touch upon, and if you'd like to sign up, you can use the QR code on the screen, and also we will include a link in our follow-up email.
Great, thank you. And then finally, we just want to give a really quick shout to our professional services team. So if you're not already aware, we do have a professional services team that can be a really great asset for helping prepare your data for an AI use case or really any advanced analytics use case as well. For example, they work very, very closely with our data conversations customers. And so whether maybe you need to set up a data framework, or maybe you need to re-strategize and reassess your existing framework, or if maybe you and your team just set up some new data philosophy, new data frameworks, and maybe now, the strategy's done, but you need an extra set of hands in getting the data in your account organized and structured, the professional services team is a really great resource here. And then they're also available to give platform overviews of different features. Maybe people on your team need a training or a refresher. Overall, they're a really great resource to lean on. So if that's something that could ever be of interest to you, reach out to your account manager and they can help get you set up. And then that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Kate, for helping host and for giving just some great content for this. Again, everyone can keep an eye out in your inbox for a recording of the session and some resources. If you submitted any questions, someone on the team or your account manager will follow up for you. And yeah, thank you for everything. All right, everyone have a great day.